Good afternoon. Welcome to the Pasadena Senior Center. You're here for a good afternoon in great company. And Aquila will tell you a little more about that. First, I want to say I'm Abel Ramirez. I'm on the board of directors of the Pasadena Senior Center, also on the board of directors of the Pasadena Playhouse. And my job at the Pasadena Playhouse is ask Sheldon to put good plays so my restaurant can do better. Because I always say, the better they play, the better we do. So, but I would like to introduce Aquila, who will in turn introduce Sheldon. Aquila is our CEO or director, executive director of the Pasadena Senior Center. She has been with us for the past 8 years or so. I have to say that she's responsible for many very positive changes that have occurred here. And as a member of the board, we are all very pleased and we enjoy having her working with us. Or actually, we work for her. So without any more, Aquila gives.
Don't you believe it, I have 18 bosses, so 18 wonderful bosses. There is really nothing more special than live performance. It is truly a gift when you can sit back and look at a performance. It's like it's just for you. And today to have Sheldon here and Damian here to talk about the play Fly is a really special opportunity for us. How many of you know the story of the Tuskegee Airmen? Well, that's good. Okay, that's great. So let me tell you a little bit about Sheldon Epps. He has been artistic director for the renowned Pasadena Playhouse since 1997. Before beginning his tenure at the Playhouse, he served as associate artistic director for the Old Globe Theater for 4 years. He was also co-founder of the Off-Broadway Theater and the production company. Mr. Epps has directed both plays and musicals at many of the country's major theaters, including the Roundabout, Manhattan Theater Club, the Guthrie, Playhouse Horizons, Seattle Repertory Theater, the Arena, and the Goodman Theater. He conceived the highly acclaimed musical Play On and Blues in the Night. Both received Tony Award nominations. He directed productions of both of those shows on Broadway and in London and the theaters around the world. We are very fortunate today that he has made time to join us today. And with that, I bring him on.
First of all, hello. It's good to be here. Thank you for joining us. I want to tell you just a little bit about how Fly came to be at Pasadena Playhouse. And then fortunately, he's just finished a student matinee like less than an hour ago. But Damian, one of our actors, has agreed to join us today to talk about what it's actually like being in the play. But neither one of us is here to give a long lecture or anything. So we'll talk a little bit and I'll ask Damian a couple of questions and then we'll open it up to be a conversation among all of us. And if you have memories about the Tuskegee Airmen, please share those. Or if you want to ask questions about the Playhouse or this play or about the process that they've gone through, which is a very interesting process to get the play onto the stage, we can do that. So, just to give you a little introduction, I think about 3 or 5 years ago, a good friend of mine from many, many years ago from a theater called Crossroads Theater in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which was one of the foremost African-American theaters in the country. One of the founders of that theater, named Ricardo Kahn, contacted me and he said, I'm working on this thing about the Tuskegee Airmen. And just to show you how long things can be in gestation for the theater, I kept having conversations with Ricardo over 4 or 5 years about this play. And Ricardo would write me and he'd say, we're doing it at such and such a theater, and we're doing it here, and we're doing it here. And I'd say, okay, Ricardo, the time will come, the time will be right, and we'll do it at Pasadena Playhouse. And I guess it was about 8 or 9 months ago when I was putting together this current season, Ricardo called me again and he said, we have the opportunity to do the play at the New Victory Theater in New York City, in Manhattan. And New Victory is a theater that does not produce its own work, it presents plays and musicals that come from other theaters. And he said, so we're looking for a place to launch this production, and if you're willing to do that, then the production will go to the New Victory Theater, and then we'll take it back to the Crossroads Theater for an encore presentation there. So all of that was very attractive, and so I finally said, yes, Ricardo, we will do the play, and we started putting all of the elements together, and we just opened the play on Sunday. So, of course, from a producing standpoint, that was very appealing to me, the possibility that our production would go on to have a life in New York City and then at another theater, and hopefully beyond that. But from an emotional point of view, I wanted to do this play and was always interested in this play because of the story. This is the story of a very brave group of men and women, we should say, who had a dream, who had a desire to do something that they were told they could not do. They were told that as black people, you do not have the mental capacity or the physical capacity to be air pilots. So we're not going to allow you to do that. And as the needs of the Second World War became greater, there was finally a crack in that door to the invitation to do that, mainly because more people were needed. More people were needed in the Air Force. So finally, even with the skepticism and the lack of belief that black men and women had the capacity to do these jobs, about 600 brave people said, we are going to do these jobs. And they started the training, and they very, very successfully defended the air forces that often were very much prejudiced against them and faced prejudice in this country and prejudice in the training process, even as they were fighting to defend America, which they did quite successfully. So the belief that you can do something because you are brave enough to do it, because you have the courage to do it, you have the determination to do it, and ultimately because you were willing to acquire the skills to do it, was what was so appealing to me about doing the play. And as I say, we opened the production on Sunday. It's been hugely well received by our audiences, by critics. I'm happy to say, again, as the producer, that ticket sales are really good. So if you enjoy this conversation, by all means, I encourage you to come and get a ticket soon before you can't. And I hope that time will come very soon. So I want to tell you a little bit about my guest, Damian here. Damian has worked off-Broadway, in several off-Broadway shows. He's worked at Baltimore Center Stage, Arkansas Repertory Theater, Portland Playhouse, many other theaters. In film, he did English of English, and on television, he did The Player and Story of a Gun, among others. Damian studied at the University of Delaware and the University of Evansville. So it's my pleasure to welcome Damian Thompson.
Hi, guys.
So, Damian, I know that there were, there are the usual things that actors do to get prepared for a role and to do a play, and I know you did those. You have to learn the lines, you have to learn the blocking and all of that. But tell us about some of the extraordinary things that you guys had to go through to get ready for this particular production.
Well, this is it's a huge ensemble show. There's 4 core guys, like 4 main guys, and then there's 4 other castmates. But there's a group of 4 men that spend a lot of time together. And there's a lot of movement that we do as these 4. And unlike, I mean, I also have a dance background, and we are in a studio, and you have a mirror, and you can watch yourself, and and see all that stuff happening. This was not that. This was like you have to be able to, perform as one person. So 4 people performing as one. So there are scenes where we're flying a plane, and we're all doing the exact same thing, but we can't rely on a mirror because it won't be there during the show. So we kind of have to get attuned to each other's movement, each other's timing. And for me, I think that was one of the hardest part of the process. It's just, being able to center yourself in such a way that you're aware of everyone that is around you and being able to move with them.
Yeah, just to explain this a little bit more, and also for me to tell you one of the things that was most appealing about the play. This is a play. This is a piece of theater. It's not a movie. So there are the equivalent of action sequences that you would see in a movie. People in airplanes, flying, battle sequences, all of that. But all of it done basically with 4 chairs and 4 trunks.
Yeah,
Steamer
4 chairs,
trunks.
4 trunks.
That's kind of it, and a array of screens behind the actors. So all of those action sequences are created by the actors' movement and body English and voice and sound and these images behind them. And what you get is a real sense of what it was like to be in the cockpit.
You really feel like you're flying.
Yeah.
Just from watching it. It's amazing.
Yeah. And didn't you have an actual Tuskegee Airman come in?
Yeah. We had Roscoe C. Brown, which is one of the originals, came in, and he was the advisor throughout the entire process. So he told us like what it was like each day, what it was like inside the actual pit, what it was like to fly. What was so great about him is that everything that he had gone through, he had nothing but like positive things to say. He's in such a positive place. It's very inspiring, especially as an actor myself. To see someone go through real adversity and still come out with such a positive outlook.
And already we've had several of the original Tuskegee Airmen come to see the play. What's that like for you and the cast? The other day before the play started, opening night before the play started, we go out there and we say, okay, here are 6 real Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on.
Yeah, you're on. And then they're sitting in the front, and
Right,
it's like,
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like, for me, it's like it wasn't an issue of being scared. For me, it's an issue of like, it makes it that much more real. And it makes me, and I'm speaking personally, it kind of grounds me and brings me here and makes me not think about what I'm doing after or my grocery shopping or it's like I'm here and I'm trying to honor something that they have done, So I found it very inspiring.
Yeah, I must say I did also on opening night.
And
I knew it was happening, and I've been told there's going to be this ceremony, and Mayor Tornick, our mayor, was there, and he presented a proclamation and all of that, and then we had the men stand up.
Yeah.
But even though I had acknowledged that this was coming, when they actually stood up in the theater right before the play, it was so moving and so inspiring, and they were there kind of jolly and having fun and all of that, but to realize that this play that I've come to know well and this story that I've come to know well was literally the story of these men's lives was really kind of overwhelming. Now your character in the play is a little bit of an outsider, actually, because he's not literally from the United States. He's trying to defend the United States.
Yes. He's from the Bahamas, the British West Indies. And at the time, to be a part of this, they basically chose, it was like the dream team of like blacks. It's like all the ones that went to the highest schools, the highest grades, and so they pulled all the top people that they could and created this training, to try to see if this would work. So at the time, they had people that came from the islands, people that came from Canada. It's just the best of the best from this North America area.
Actually, that's one of my favorite moments in the play. Is there's a sort of blowhard commanding officer, the training officer, who does not treat the men very well. But one of my favorite moments in the play is at one of the first lessons, he's spouting off some facts, and your character corrects him.
My character is like, he is a numbers guy. He is smart, he knows numbers, he knows and he can just take it and so the commanding officer was telling us how much the plane weighs. He's like, it weighs 1,900 pounds. The guy's like, no, I'm sorry. Actually, it's 1,936. And it's like, so he's like, and he does that. Like, that's his thing. He's so like, each of the characters have their own strengths, and when you combine that is how we achieve, our goal.
And also an interesting thing about your character, which is not dealt with very much in the play, but I find fascinating, is there's a moment in which your character gets bumped out.
Yeah.
And we assume is out of the service.
Yeah.
But then comes back later at a pivotal moment in the play to sort of help save Ben. Can you tell us about that process?
What it does is that when we think of the Tuskegee Airmen, a lot of times people think that they were the men and women that only flew the actual planes. But because at the time everything was segregated, for them to be able to fly, they had to have their own, you had to have black engineers, you had to have black guys that had the lights that, that told the planes how to land, you had to have black mechanics, you had to have black nurses, everything had to be black. So it was like the entire unit had to be trained to support the people that flew, and all those people that contributed are considered Tuskegee Airmen as well, because without them, the pilots would not be able to fly. They have to get the planes fixed, they have to get their outfits fixed, they have to, they have to be patched up when they get hurt. It's a whole process. And so my character helps to show the other side of it, the flying as well as what other things they did. I'm trying not to give much away.
Right.
So you can come and experience the story.
I'll say that you're the wind beneath the wings.
I'm the wind beneath the wings.
But you also make a good point that we should actually always refer to it as the Tuskegee Airmen and women.
Yeah.
Because the women who supported this elite group were equally important. You can't fly without a support system.
Yeah. And a lot of times they would fly the bomber planes and the actual planes that were flown in war, they would transport them to the bases. They would fly them to the bases.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Vicki?
I have a question. Are each of the characters a composite, or is it an actual person?
Oh no, it's a composite. Because the thing is, I think there's 8. There's a set of 8 for each mission, and four flyers fly on the left, and four flyers fly on the right, and 4 flyers fly on the left, and they kind of do this kind of weaving.
That's why he was bumped out.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know his right.
And so what they do is they weave as they protect these 60 big planes that are just kind of like big fat ducks just sitting there because they can't move very quickly. So the 4 pilots on each side have to stop the other planes from trying to shoot them down. So your unit are the people that you trained with, and so you'll get a chance to see a unit,
But composites, true, but based on a lot of fact, a lot of research, a lot of personal stories. I think that Ricardo and Trey have probably met hundreds of Tuskegee Airmen and women, and so they drew from their real stories to create this unit.
Yeah, it's so funny because after the show, like when you speak to the Tuskegee Airmen, like for us, it was like, oh my, that took me back. I was there. Like, and those steps, we would step just like that. We would move just like, it's like they just were like flashback to what, their exact time. So, yeah.
There's a question over there.
You mentioned that the way you described it was they were fighter pilots in front of the bomber pilots.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah.
Were there any black Tuskegee Airmen who were allowed to be bomber pilots, or were they all?
No. Yeah, no. Not at the time when that happened. Yeah, the only it became almost an issue because a bomber pilot would be ranked below a fighter pilot only because the fighter pilot had gone to school. And if you have gone to college, you enter the Army with a different rank. And so it became a slight issue that you didn't want to mix them because, with the whole segregation thing, you would have to be answering to a black person. So they kept them very separate.
Well, yeah, my question was kind of, it's like, were the fighters considered to be elite, or were there issues of, because the fighter pilots have to defend the bombers, they take the flak sometimes, did they somehow figure, well, we can assign black people in there because they're expendable?
No. It wasn't an issue of like eliteness or non-eliteness because they had a lot of other pilots that were white. It's just that the Tuskegee Airmen became well known because they were so good at their job. So like they had like other sects, like I think the each group of plane had a different tail color. And the blacks had red, so they were known as like the red tails. But they had like the checkered tails, they had like, all these other ones as well. It was just kind of a way of giving them an opportunity, but still keeping them separated. Because if they were doing other things, like it would be too much to try to have an entire black unit fly bomber, planes, because there's like 10 people on each plane, and like it's a whole thing.
But it's an interesting question, and one way that I would respond to your question is not about racism or the politics, but about skill level.
Yeah.
Is the quarterback in a football team is not necessarily the most skilled person on the team, though the camera stays frequently on the quarterback because he's got the ball or is carrying the ball. The bombers were not necessarily more skilled as flyers than those protecting. I mean, what you see depicted in the plays, basically the bombers sit there, and they're on a path to that destination point to drop the bomb. But the flyers around them are doing these enormous things, up and down and in and out and around and swerving and curving and flipping around and all of that. So, the skill level of these men was often greater, it seems from the play, than the guy who was actually delivering the bomb.
Because a lot of bomber pilots didn't necessarily go to college. It wasn't like it wasn't a very like elite thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Flying in general is hard, and it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of knowledge. But they had to be in a group of like 60 huge planes that just basically moved at a slow pace and would go over the target and then drop bombs. So they didn't have to do much or do much frantic thinking or thinking on the spot and all that kind of stuff.
The Tuskegee Airmen were actually here at Pasadena College and spoke here, I think, 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
And I remember, one more question.
Yeah.
My last one. And I thought that they talk about, they had the recruits and some made it into the elite group and some were washed out.
Yeah.
My question was there any story about the guys that washed out? It was tough enough to get into the elite
Yeah.
brigade, but the ones that washed out, since they were black, the might not have had any other opportunity. How did that affect them emotionally with how the rest of their lives went after they washed out?
I think it's, I'm speaking very generally, but I think a lot of it has to do with the way that you're washed out, like the reason. You know, if you're washed out because you have an attitude, or because you're being abrasive, that's another issue. Like they're not going to try to, But for example, I'm trying not to give away this story, but like, for example, like if you wash out because you just happen to be scared of heights, or you didn't know until you got up there and you're like, something is happening, but you're still intelligent and you're still, doing your work and you're trying and blah, blah. This is where the other areas came in. You might be a mechanic, you might be, something else.
I was concerned that emotionally it would affect the guys that washed out because it was tough enough being black anyway.
Yeah.
And then if you washed out, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. Like it's like life. You go after a goal and you might not achieve it. But I think what was more important to these guys, like once you get over the anger and you get over the embarrassment and the sadness and the disappointment, is that you start to focus on the goal at hand. And when you talk to these guys, like there's not a distinction between like bomber pilots and fighter pilots, and like they see themselves as like a unit, as a group of men going for a certain cause, and so it's once you get over your personal disappointment, you get to a place where you realize that you can still contribute to what you were trying to do, but just in a different way. It's like being an actor. Sometimes you're not the lead, but doesn't mean that you're not an intricate part of that story.
But to your question, one thing that's interesting about your question that is depicted in the play is that the level of prejudice within the training system was such that they were actually looking for ways to wash these guys out because they were black.
Yeah.
The hope was, if you were assigned these 25 black guys to train, the hope was you could find a way to eliminate all of them, or at least 20 of them.
Yeah.
So that's how skilled these guys had to be. They had to be so enormously skilled that someone trying to get something on them couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's like Obama. We've lived in a country for 8 years where the Republican Party stated shortly after he was elected, we're going to be looking for something to get him. So unfortunately, some of that is still with us. Yes, Abel.
Well, I first would like to say that I witnessed a very long standing ovation on Sunday. So praise good. But what about the tap dancer?
Oh, yes.
Or you don't want to say anything?
No. It's a sort of well-known part of the production.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it, and you can too. I should have said that at the beginning, that again, that was appealing to me about doing the play was Rick said to me in one of the early conversations, and there's a tap dancer in it. And I said, what? Huh? What are you talking? I thought you said this was about the Tuskegee Airmen. What do you mean there's a tap dancer in it? And so he actually sent me a little film clip, and there is a character in the play which is almost like a Greek chorus. In a Greek play, the chorus doesn't necessarily participate in the action. The chorus comments on the action, usually verbally in a Greek play or in Shakespeare, for that matter. In this play, this character called the tap griot or storyteller comments on the action in the play for the most part through movement and specifically through tap dance. So Omar, who is this wonderful, wonderful, very distinct, specialized kind of dancer, speaks through his taps and his movements at times when the guys, because of the politics involved, can't necessarily express exactly what they feel publicly or openly.
It's perfect. He is just, I don't use the word genius very often, but when you see this guy, it's just like you seat, and you're just like, and each show it's a little different because he alters it according to the audience and the feeling and like all that. So, but his feet he's just amazing. He's amazing, an amazing.
Yes,
tapper.
he truly tells a story with his feet. And
Yeah.
it was interesting because Omar he's sort of done the show many times, really since its creation. And so in rehearsal, he just kind of do the steps sometimes.
Do a little bit,
But
yeah.
as we got closer and closer to the performance, he would actually start to act his dancing. And so, it went from level 4 to like level 25 on a scale of 10, because suddenly the storytelling that he was doing through not just the technical steps that he was doing, which are amazing, but through the acting and the connection and
Yeah.
becoming a part of this unit
Yeah.
that you talked about. He is as much an integral
Yeah.
part of the unit as any of the other four is really
Yeah.
remarkable, and a great use again of the theater as opposed to cinema.
Like a lot of the movements and stuff and drills and stuff that we do, we don't do it to a track, we do it to his tapping.
Right.
And he keeps the rhythm for us, and he's just, it's like, when he was a young kid, like he was on Star Search, and I think he won 13 times and did like all this great stuff. But it's just like, for me, like to see someone actually communicate a story through tapping, it's unlike anything that I've ever seen. Like I've seen great tappers, but it's not enough just to be great. Like he is telling a story.
Yeah.
I'd say brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Did you see it? Oh,
Oh, you saw
Good.
it? Oh.
good. Any other questions? Yes.
I'll be there 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
Oh,
Good.
I've already got a few things I'll be looking for.
Okay.
Any other things you might tip off to farther enjoy the performance?
Oh no, I think if you just walked in there without knowing anything, you would be like, I've had friends that have walked in and they were just like, I didn't know anything, but I was like, oh my God, like it's just like it invites you in.
Yeah, I think that's true. Actually, the less you know, the better. I mean, since we've talked about it, I'll tell you that the show begins with the tap dancer. That's the very first thing you see.
Yeah.
Which is completely unexpected. You think you're going to have, guys walking on in uniforms or suits
Yeah.
or whatever, but that's the first thing that you see that leads into very interesting prologue that sets the time frame of the show. But it's exciting to discover it all, so we've probably given away way too much already.
One thing I didn't realize
Yes.
until the end where it started, the setting.
Yeah.
Don't give it away.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And
But you do-
done,
yeah,
in,
but you
done
get
in an
it.
interesting
Yeah,
way
which is
to
good.
not let you know to
Yeah.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I have so many.
Just one at a time.
We tap dance, so
Oh.
hearing you say what you said about being able to tell the story through tap is really amazing.
Yeah.
The Tuskegee Airmen are old, they must all be in
90s.
90s.
Yeah.
and maybe hundreds even
Yeah.
at this point. I
Maybe.
know
Yeah.
one or two that are in their hundreds.
Yeah.
And so they have such a long, wonderful history. To have the opportunity to sit down with them
Yeah.
and talk to them, and that must have been incredible, really.
Yeah.
Did you all have that chance? Did you get that?
Yes, we did, because we rehearsed in New York for 2 weeks before we came here, and then coming here as well. It's just like, because they're all over the country.
Yeah.
So
There's
it's like,
lots
you
of
know,
chapters.
Yeah, there's lots of,
In the art that are still with us?
I don't know the exact number, no.
A fair number, though. I mean, they seem to have longevity as well.
They do, that's just, oh my, like Roscoe Brown, I couldn't believe it, like he was like spewing out facts and dates and like, and adding up fractions and stuff. I was like, what? Yeah, his mind is as sharp can be.
So I got in the car on Saturday and I heard the tail end of an interview on NPR. And I wasn't quite sure who they were interviewing, but they were talking about the play. And whoever it was that they were interviewing, and it was a gentleman,
I think it was Ricardo.
okay,
Yeah.
because then he said he didn't know that he had an uncle,
Yeah, it was him. He did
Right.
that, yeah.
that he
Right.
was talking to someone, his mom.
Yes.
He was talking to his mother, and his mother says, "Oh yeah, your uncle so-and-so was a Tuskegee Airman." So I
Yeah.
just thought that was really
Yeah.
unusual.
Well, that has been one of the fascinating things about doing the play is, and Ricardo says this has been going on for him for 10 years, you find all these personal connections that suddenly somebody who's been coming to the theater for years says, oh, my father was a Tuskegee Airman.
Yeah.
Or, people just show up and they've brought you guys pictures and, letters and things and airmen themselves, Suddenly we thought, Susan will tell you, that we thought we'd found every Tuskegee Airman's chapter in greater LA, and then somebody will call up from Rancho Cucamonga and say, I'm the Rancho Cucamonga chapter. So the circle, it's like putting a pebble in water and the circles just spread.
We got to meet a lot of the sons and daughters, and there was one daughter that came, and her dad had recently passed, I think January 5th, and so she brought like this picture of him and like all this stuff, and he had died with a friend of his that also died on the same day, that they had enlisted on the same day. I know, right? Yeah, and so she's telling us all these stories, and we each get a picture and we have it up in our dressing room, and like a couple of days go by and we're like, oh, we need a new haircut, like me and a guy in the cast, and so we walk over in Pasadena, somewhere around there. We're in the barber chair and we're like getting cut, we're telling the guy, you gotta come see this show, it's gonna be amazing. He's like, oh, cool, whatever. And as we're leaving, we walk past this guy and he's like, my father was a Tuskegee Airman. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing, you should come see this play. And we're giving him like our info, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, I mean, is he alive? Can he come as well? And he's like, no, actually, he died on January 5th. And I was like, what's his name, Lawrence? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh my God. We met his best friend's daughter, and like we were like having this whole conversation.
Oh my goodness.
Irony.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a
Yes,
small
ma'am.
world.
Once they were trained, where were they based?
Tuskegee, Alabama.
And then where did they fly? Where was the combat?
I think they went over to Italy and Germany.
Certainly Italy and Germany.
Yeah.
At the height of the war.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the flight scenes you were referring to, what about you preparing for that? Did you watch film strip or anything?
Yeah, we watched a few documentaries, and like, I mean, the first time I was like, I don't know, I mean, I'm just on a commercial jet. I'm like, so you go and the thing about today is like, you can YouTube and Google anything. Anything. They have flight simulations, they have like, this is how the plane looked, this is how it would move, like, So all of that was like really helpful. And just having like the actual Tuskegee Airmen there telling you, like you're not able to sit like this in the plane because it's, it's small. You're in there like that. You're in this little pit, you got them around, got your little knobs, like it's not, so it's just having that with the research helps.
Well, Damian had a 10:30 this morning performance because we had a student matinee, which was great.
And we have one tonight.
Because we got the chance to expose this story to all 600 young people between the ages of 10 and 15, which was really wonderful. But he also has a performance tonight. So I'm going to thank you all for coming and ask you, please, if you haven't seen the show, come again, or please come. And Susan is here, and she's going to tell you a bit more about that, I think.